Kick off in 1 minute. Thanks for being here, everybody. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're really excited, and we're really hopeful that this hour and some change is a generative and enjoyable one. It's very much a welcoming back of familiar faces. We hope that you know you're amongst friends, and that this is very much a time for us to just kind of reflect and be together. Lots of things happening in the broader world, in the narrower crypto world. And our hope is that by spending just a little bit of time together, we can remember paths past some of those troubles and ways to engage healthily with one another in ways that might spiral back out into those communities. So this is the Empty Block. It's very much a much more casual environment, which you'll find out as the call goes on, and hopefully we've tried to express. Lots of people that know what we are trying to do here. And the way that we start this on the bottom of the slide is talking about this collective gathering to just assess the last cycle, whatever that may mean, both within Kernel and without, and then prepare ourselves for the next. It's the summertime, a time that maybe we've been conditioned to have a little bit of free time, maybe not once we got into our professional worlds, but pretty typically throughout the years of our life, we've had the summer to reset, get ready for a new season. And our hope is that Kernel provides you that type of a space this summer, which is non-intrusive, but there as you'd like to tap into it. So the first place that we start is with some of our intentions, but we'll move quite quickly to what we hope is just kind of like some fun time together, just resetting the energies with one another in some breakout rooms. But these are the things that we've started with and have tried to make space for ourselves. So the biggest question in purple is one that we will ask each of us to come back to. It's a question we've asked before, but what is my most fertile path? What is Kernel's? What is ours? This question obviously continuously changes, and our ask of you today is to consider it fresh, consider it anew as you spend a bit of time with us and with people that care about you, as you think about where you are in your particular journey, and perhaps share a bit of it with us today. We hope that over the summer, with a little bit more free time and a return to Kernel, which we know can be a hectic experience, that it could be used as an opportunity to deepen relationships amongst people that you maybe have been meaning to say hello to. We want to explore under-discussed ideas in the syllabus and in Web3, some of which we find to be quite important, but are buried or harder to unveil in the typical block structure. So we have some ideas on how we will do that. 3 firesides over the summer, not 8, for some space there. And then generally, we're imagining kind of like, what are the tools that might help us work with us in tandem with us, not for us, towards healthier communal spaces, which for us is kind of the big promise of Web3, is beyond the financial and all of the other things that are happening. How can they bring us together in new and interesting ways? But these are just our intentions, and we welcome you to ask your own questions without any of our containers necessarily upon you. So these introductory slides get us going. Andy has a very quick introduction that I'll check with him right now if he'd like to do now or before or after my slides. And then we'll do kind of like a warm-up breakout room. It's a scavenger hunt. So if you're in a physical place where you know that you might have something that you might want to pick up and share, that's basically what the ask will be. You might remember that from your kernel block. And then we'll come back for a bit more on like what we've been working on and what we know we will focus on during the blog, and the ways that we'd like to hear about what you are focused on. So that'll be kind of the breakouts. It's an hour and a half. We totally understand if you can only do part one. So please don't let us hold you up if after, at any point, you have to drop. We're just very, very grateful that you're with us today. So I'll check with Andy. Would you like me to go through the introductory slides, or would you like
I'll be
to...
brief. I'll be brief.
Yeah.
This is a piece called Opening Words. Thank you. I love you. Forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. Forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. Forgive me. I forgive you. This empty blue box of cigarettes declares that the kingdom has come, is always coming, though we leave it on shifting sands, still in its plastic wrapper, waiting patiently in bright sunlight. None of its glory wasted when I, in turn, left it to the care of my grandfather, Reuben, and remembered a story about soul and the way this whole world flows when we finally let love conquer us. I cannot solve this hollow shell or do anything with its sparkling silence. All that happens is a deep bow, to pick it up softly, and an open hand carrying it to where it belongs. Come now. You too know this great belonging, have been longing for it all your life, until you begin to dance, knowing that to be with this longing, thankfully, is to see discarded cigarettes as the very arc itself, the whole trajectory of events held in the single plastic fold, reflecting untold light. Thank you. I love you. Forgive me. I forgive you. Now, our minds are one.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. It's a great blessing to be with Andy as always. And we're really, really, it's a particular time for us with this space for reflection, with all of the movements in the world. And so the forgiveness and the thanks, especially as we enter into relationships that we hope last well beyond blocks. We know that there's a difference in energy about meeting again than meeting for the first time. And so our hope is that as we get to know each other better and we fail and we succeed and we try to move through relationships in that particular kind of way, that we look at it for what it is. And it's a return to, it's a deepening of, and it's a requirement for more grace and forgiveness in relationship. And think a lot of Web3 struggles with this because things can feel so fleeting. And so perhaps this is a reminder towards that end. We're really grateful that the group that has been with us for Kernel remains with us. It's one of the best things that I can say about the Kernel kind of experience so far, is that the stewards that have helped make this program continue to strive alongside us. So I just want to say thank you to Sachin and Angela, who've been, the co-creators of this experience and have been with us now for over 2 years. For Sid, who joined us after block 4, for Aaliyah, who was in Genesis block with us, Simon, who is now joined as the 7th. And it's been really great starting our engineering beginnings that we'll start off today by sharing a little bit about what we're doing there. And then, of course, many of you, we could have added many more people on this slide, but so many people to thank for the work that they've done getting us ready for the block. I want to explicitly call out Rory, Susie, and N, who've done so much to get us mentally and physically prepared for not only block 6, but just what it is to reflect upon together. And obviously, each and every one of you who's with us today is a part of this story ongoing, and we want to hear how it is that you want to engage over the summer and beyond. So one ask at the beginning, we'll come back to this at the end, you don't have to do it now, but one thing that we thought would be fun is just a round of reintroductions. Don't have to do it today, but one thing that we suggest is if you could check out your own first introduction and just like see how that reads to you today after a few months. That's one of the fun things about that channel, is there's such rich history and like a very specific timestamp of how you introduce yourself there. And if you want to read that, reintroduce yourself, consider the ways that your experience has changed. If there have been people that have walked with you since then that you might want to tag in your new introduction, or people you want to say hello to next, please consider doing that. The interest channel is there, and then you all have been added to the KB6 empty block channel, where we hope to do an exercise before this call ends. But before that, so you have a sense, we've been talking about Kernel as a community of care for some time, and this word care has been important to us as we think about what it is that's happening, not only in Kernel, but hopefully in a broader sense, what's possible with Web3. And the sense is beyond corporate environments or political environments. Niran Babalola reminds us that there are communal spaces that we can choose to opt into in our society. And if we choose to give them greater agency, and if those communal spaces might be better able to finance themselves, we might find better patterns to be together. And as a society, it seems like something that is really interesting and important to spend time with, this idea. So how might what we do in Web3 encourage communities that have a bit more care within themselves and amongst communities? And so we draw upon ideas from the world of mutual aid. We think a lot about lively relationship within Kernel, and also within projects that have come through Kernel. And so what you see for us in this right-hand side is this image of kind of a flower, and you see Kernel is very much not at the center, but our instinct, and I can go through this call and just call out projects I know. I know Emily is working on a project. I know that Glenn is working on Meme. I know that John Ruth is working on his own project. Melvin's working on Zaha. We have Paul working on OP Games. Everyone's working on something interesting and exciting. And the idea that we want to consider is, how might lively relationship be central to the ways that we think about Web3? How might infinite games and open fields for exploration make their way into the story? And then there's something perhaps best captured by how Andy kicked us off today. about just remembrance of the places that we came from. And so these are just words that have been with us and kind of guide where we hope Kernel might go next. More tactically, there are 3 pathways that we'll get into in the second half of this call for those who are keen. And these are the ways that we think block 6 might unfold. More so than any previous block, we have an area called kernel building kernel that has become a really vibrant part of what's happening right now. It's part of the reason for the empty block was to start working on open infrastructure for all communities of care. And starting with kernel was the primary goal there. So Simon has joined and has done some really incredible work. Rory and many others, Anthony, who's on this call, have contributed to these engineering experiments. But there's also other things that trend towards the artistic, trends towards the financial, and us thinking about models for how kernel might best serve itself in a sustainable, generative way so that it can serve others. Find that balance between those. Convivial kernel is the continuation of how kernel, we hope, has always felt. So we want this summer to be perhaps a little calmer than any other and more self-directed, but we still have some structure around co-creating peer learning environments for ideas that we think are healthy to share in this context, but also most importantly balanced by your kernel adventures as always. So many of you are returning with adventures that we've heard of before. Some of you may have new ones since you spent time with us in your kernel block. And so that always is what makes kernel a more convivial and exciting place. So one part of today's exercise is quite casually, but hopefully starting the conversation around what it is that you want to bring into KB6 and into your summer well beyond kernel. So yeah, we're 20 minutes into the call. So I think we're a little longer than we expected, but we want to do the first breakout before getting into some of that stuff. This breakout, again, might be familiar and is more important probably than anything else we have to share, is just spending time reminding ourselves of like who all is in the room. And so we're going to break out for scavenger hunt. There are 2 prompts for you as you move around your room. It's pick an object of importance that's with you right now. The other prompt that we've used in the past, if that's trickier, might be pick an object that's older than you in your environment and then share why it's meaningful to you. We'll be in these rooms for about 30 minutes. The rough room size will be 18 or so, and then we'll come back. So I think Sid is going to help with the breakout rooms, and then we'll be back here for kind of the second part shortly thereafter.
Cool, I'm creating them now.
All right, we'll see you in the rooms.
We'll start again briefly when Vivek makes it back into the room.
Yes, that's right. I will, I'll start us off kind of quickly, just in case people do start to have to trickle out. We'll get through the rest of the slides in the next 10 minutes. So if you are able to stick around, we have some important things that we're excited about sharing. One of the things, this is a quote, I'll come back to this, but there's a quote from a part of the syllabus that's that undercovered part. It's called deep response, that if we leave you with anything today, I think this would be one of the types of things that we're exploring in kernel that you maybe did not see in your block. So if you're looking for a bonus part of the syllabus, this is definitely something we offer in that regard. It's from there, and when we think about this gathering, there's a ceremony, an indigenous ceremony that's described in that, called the stirring of the ashes. And it's described as a place where the collective gathers to assess the last cycle and prepare for the next. The collective stirring is critical to understand the nuances of credit and debit. Credit might be better termed commons, for we are considering here commons-based societies. So on this side is a little bit more about what we are trying to do to find health financially for Kernel. So one of those things is a fundraise and a variety of parts of that raise that we hope keep it from the venture-backed models of the past and towards healthier versions. But we do acknowledge that we're at a moment where kind of debits and credits and those types of things are important. And that comes both from a technical perspective and a financial perspective. So this next segment will kind of get into those a little bit. But everything always does still start with kind of like the rituals and rhythms for what we think the next few weeks will play out as. So I just want you to see this slide deck has the calendar that you should already have access to, the Convos calendar, which has some like loose structure for the block that you can always tap into when you want. There are very few, serious sessions. There's no DeFi guild, no DAO guild, no token communities, no NFT building guild, but there is story time on Tuesdays. There's meditation with Marlon, who's in the last block on Wednesdays. Antonio, who's an incredible dancer and yoga practitioner, is leading kind of a combined mindful movement practice across a lot of different traditions on Thursdays. And then we do have like 2 build-oriented sessions, which are convivial kernel, just trying to get things organized for KB7, introduce more people in kernel to the process for how we get from one block to the next, so that some of that becomes like more clear and we can share it more with each of you. And then kernel building kernel, which is much more engineering focused. I do want to call out the firesides, especially as a place where we think, 3 times through the block, we'll be able to come together in more of a exploratory mode around, yes, ideas in the syllabus, but these firesides we hope will be also ones that create space for your projects and your ideas. And we're inviting mentors to the firesides for the first time so that they can kind of get an experience of what a fireside is, because we haven't really done a good job inviting them in the past, but also so that we can use those sessions kind of like a combined fireside and office hours type vibe, somewhere in between where projects are exploring perhaps some of those ideas that were mentioned that day. So that's that. I just shared one Convo link, but all of those Convo links are on the calendar. And we welcome you in any capacity if these are nourishing to you over your summer. We have a block explorer that kind of helps with that as well. So if you prefer that as a place to kind of get organized, I've also just put that in the chat there. But yeah, I'd say probably the last few slides are kernel building kernel, and then a bit more on this fundraise. Andy, would you or Simon or Rory like to talk about kernel building kernel?
Sure. Thank you so much. So, as Vivek has beautifully mentioned already, the engineering work that we are engaged with after 2 years of learning about what it is that we really need to do and what problems we actually want to solve is building open infrastructure for communities of care. The way in which that unfolds is through a single mono repo that contains all of the focused home-cooked web apps and patterns that we have found ourselves in need of, such that we can solve our own problems, but do so in an open and living way, the notion of lively relationship that Vivek mentioned earlier, in order to scale care without having to scale kernel. And kernel is never going to be the kind of place where we have 10,000 people in a block, because we so value these intimate and lively exchanges between peers, because that's where real learning happens. But if we build infrastructure in such a way that can be taken and used in other places in their own context, not just forked, but like extended in a living tradition in a contextual and local way, then we feel that we might be able to cultivate the kinds of care that are contextually appropriate and non-dogmatic that we really want to see in the world. This begins by creating our own non-custodial wallets, and it may seem a little unintuitive to some of you, but the great joy of doing this kind of work within the context of Kernel is that it is educational first, not financial. So when you sign up for this wallet, none of it works except for the keys, except for the core piece behind it. And you will see when you log in just a mock screen of where we're taking this. And what's important about it is that there is nowhere on the home screen a balance in numeric form, right? This wallet is an educational tool. It is a learning experience, and that allows us to think very differently about the kinds of software that we write and the way in which it's represented. So while all of these applications are still very much a work in progress, we don't think that's a problem to put them on these slides and talk about them here with our friends, because it's really an opportunity to get involved. All of these web apps are built using React. So if you have any experience with JavaScript, it should be really intuitive to you how to run them locally and how to start contributing. And the exact ways in which that will unfold are talked of in the Friday calls, and we really welcome you and encourage you to join us in there, both as a means of learning about what open infrastructures for community of care actually look like, as well as contributing in whatever way you feel is necessary. That doesn't have to be code. It can be user reviews, it can be feedback, it can be design suggestions, it can be language and representational suggestions. All of these things are very, very welcome. And the approach thus far, which we will continue, has been that as more and more people use them, we discover the kinds of healthy patterns which are more and more useful to more people. And that kind of self-recursivity is critical to cultivating the sort of computing culture that we think can scale care in genuinely intentional ways. So there are a few other links there which begin to attend to some of the other things that happen in kernel blocks. I encourage you to explore them. In those calls, we'll talk about unprofiling ourselves more and some of the ways in which we can adventure together and co-discover serendipitous interactions and all of these kinds of things, which are part of our agenda. But do be warned, there are dragons here, and it is alpha software on staging, so things will break. But again, that is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for us to learn together and to iterate collectively towards something more like wisdom and less like product. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Yeah. Those calls have been incredibly educational, and we've taken inspiration from them in the Tuesday convivial kernel calling. That the hope really is to create an environment where each hour is predominantly spent learning together while building, building being the means by which that happens. So if that's of interest, we would love to have you. And it does bring us to this next part. I mean, when we think about where kernel is and why it's so important for us to have an empty block now, it comes back to this idea of the stirring of the ashes, of understanding the credits and debits. One of the things that kernel was premised on always was this idea of the gift economy, the idea that it's underrepresented in its importance in the way that the world that we want to be in might work, which is one that is based on reciprocal relationship, based on an understanding that you can always give from a place of enough when you feel like you have enough, and how we might move with that ourselves, and then see how that see how that goes from there, really. But one thing that I think we're coming back to is kind of like, yeah, just like some realities, debits and credits from module 2 in the global financial system, and knowing that some more explicitness in kernel might be healthy. And so we're working towards that with, first and foremost, what we think will be a healthy fundraise for kernel. The challenge that we present to ourselves in this is that we are not planning on going down the venture funding route, which might be the easiest way to raise something like $3.2 million. But our hope instead is to go to a variety of value-aligned donors to seed kernel as educational institution for a hopefully one-time large donation round. Perhaps we will need a second or a third, but the intention is not for it to be a long, ongoing pattern within kernel. Although, we have to see how things play. But we do have ideas on how that might be done. So first and foremost, we are going to some of the institutions that you'll know around Web3, many of whom are already in the syllabus because we've drawn inspiration from them, and asking for anywhere from 100 to 300K. We are releasing a project called Signature Economies, which is a part of kernel building kernel that first and foremost provides a particular take on signatures and their importance within the Web3 context, and the way that that word might provide us more grounds for interesting ideas than ownership, which is a word that Web3 has started to use quite aggressively in its branding. But signatures to us feel like a potentially healthier environment to start from. So that experiment includes the opportunity for a more crowdfund-based fundraise, where people from the community can participate both within kernel, but ideally well beyond the kernel fellows. And we think that through these two options, we have a pretty good shot of getting to that 3.2 million. And we plan to be incredibly transparent, open, accountable, and clear with how those funds are raised and how those funds then are used to seed the next phase of kernel. Right now, we have a small group of 7 stewards, but increasingly contributors from around the ecosystem, and people that we really are grateful for being with us for some of these engineering experiments, for making kernel a more convivial space. And we're slowly trying to understand the ways to make that more explicit and invite paid contribution. So that's one of the hopes, if we can get to $3.2 million, of course, within these markets and this imperfect time to go out to do this. So we will keep you posted. It's a big focus of mine of particular, but Sachin is also doing lots. Andy is working on signature economies. Leah, Sid, everyone has this on their radar over the summer. And it's one of the things that we are making healthy space for. So the long-term vision includes this endowment that we've alluded to a few times, and is only been made possible in our imagination through kernel fellows who have had projects who have stated that they would want a small percentage, usually no more than 1%, of their either equity or token supply to go back to a kernel endowment. And that has been a really meaningful thing to have received. And we are kind of actively exploring like what that looks like, and actually creating such an endowment and what that pattern might feel like. So if these more financial matters are of interest, we're very open to other ideas and thoughts, and definitely connections if you are working at a place where you think there's a healthy relationship to be explored with kernel. So please reach out if you think that's the case. Yeah. I wonder, Andy or Aaliyah or Sachin, anyone has anything before we get to the last segment? I think we're done with slides basically for the day. Okay.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Amazing. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. And so this brings us to kind of the last exercise that we would love to do together. My plan from here was to play a quick tune and come back to that question of what is it that people are feeling for the summer? How are they feeling about what that might look like? The three questions that are on the screen are, what is my most fertile path? What is Kernel's? What is ours collectively? But really, the answer for you could be you're working on how to do nothing this summer, or you're working on a very specific goal, and it doesn't have to be Web3 related. So our hope is that we can get some of those in the KB6 empty block channel, just enough to kick us off into some breakout rooms that are a bit smaller, maybe to reflect on today and prepare a bit for the 8 weeks ahead. Okay, so I will play the music. You, if you can, get into the KB6 empty block channel and start typing. And once the click clacking is all done, we'll return and do one last breakout. Several people typing. We'll let one more song play for a moment. We still have people typing, but I'm gonna try to take us to the end here because we're gonna do one last breakout for anyone who wants to stick around. The ideas that you've put in the chat and that continue to flow in KB6 empty block are the exact types of things that we want to make sure we make space for. And so it's incredibly meaningful to us as stewards. Your adventures make this story go. So we're excited about the first looks at those and, you know, a more calm, exploratory, empty way by which we can plug in together. So we'll have a breakout room. The one thing, because I don't think we'll come back, I just want to put on the screen, because I do see some people talking about these, is a reminder that we do have alumni showcase coming up. So if you do have something that you're trying to present, we would like for you to present it. And we've been asking you to do a lot of things, so I almost feel bad doing this, but we haven't gotten that many responses on news. So we want more responses on Kernel News. And if you're able to share there as well, now or whenever, it will be compiled and sent back out quite soon. So those are our last comments. Please enjoy reading what other people have posted in KB6 Empty Block. And if there's somebody that you want to say hello to, please feel welcome. For now, we'll just offer some breakout rooms. Sid and I had talked about doing 11, but I wonder if we do maybe slightly less, Sid, 8 or so for the people that want to stick around. And if you do have to go, thank you so much. It's been really meaningful to be together. We'll see you soon at different parts of the empty block, and we're always here. If you have specific things for the stewards, just message us. We're really excited to hear from you.
Yeah, I'll create 9 breakout rooms, if that's okay.
Perfecto. Okay. As Sid creates those, we did put some questions, you know, just to guide it. Explore together the intentions, hopes, and excitements for the summer, which we've just put on the Slack. And you have 2 other questions that you could use, which are, what truth have you recently discovered or relinquished? As I delete it. What was your favorite thing to do as a child? Do you have any funny stories from those times, or ways those stories continue? So these are examples. If you want to hang around, we'll be here popping through the rooms. And if not, we'll see you very soon. Thank you so much.